This episode of Wild Women in Photography highlights some amazing women from past episodes who are pushing themselves outside their comfort zones in pursuit of photography. Get ready to hear this collection of selected conversations with Colleen Miniuk from episode 16, Sarah Marino from episode 9, Shanda Aiken, Jeannie Sumrall-Ahero, Nancy Kurakawa, and Martha Montiel from episode 17, and from episode 23, Viktoria Haack. Check out the episode description for links to their work and to listen to full past episodes. Now on to this episode. Let's go. Oh my gosh. Well, it's so interesting. I remember maybe a few years ago, I remember listening to you and you were talking about your artist in residency in Acadia, and hearing this about you. You live in Arizona where it's warm. You go to places a lot where it's warm. I know you go to Death Valley. I mean, these aren't all warm places, but it's so interesting. I remember listening to a story from you from Acadia in the middle of winter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, what month was that? How many? So you've done 3.
Well, I've done 3 artist in residencies.
Okay.
My first was November 2009, then it was October 10, and then it was January, February 13.
That sounds cool.
And so, yeah, it was funny. So Acadia is actually where I connected photographically with water. So I was still terrified of water where I couldn't see my feet, but Acadia was the reason, my residencies were the reason why I was like, I really think I need to explore this more because I really love water. I was the park's first winter residence. And so when the coordinator asked if I wanted to do it, I was like, Kate, you do know that I don't own a coat. I'm from Arizona. And so it was kind of funny. But yeah, it was decidedly colder in January, February than it is in Arizona. So, but awesome.
Right. Yeah. I'm just curious. I have one more question after this, but I'm just curious, I don't always have fun when I'm really, really cold. Because I'm I am freezing. How do I photograph? My hands are cold. I am especially if there's snow involved or I'm wet in some way like this, it's all the things. And so I want to know, what was the time that it was most cold? No, that was the coldest, but you had the most fun. This is what I'm asking. This is a personal question, obviously, because I want to know if it's possible to have fun photographing while you're cold if you live in somewhere warm.
It is, Brie. I am here to tell you that it is. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that you're dressed for it. You're ready for it. And that we talk about not having expectations, but this would be the time where you're like, well, I might expect to be a little bit uncomfortable. And so long as I'm not getting frostbite, I'm probably okay. We must suffer for our art. No, I'm just kidding. All right. So, I think the best story that came out of my third residency with winter, at least sort of my experience with Maine winter, was that they had a nor'easter blow through. And I grew up half of my childhood in Chicago, so I know snow and I know blizzard. I get that. But I wasn't sure what was going to happen with a nor'easter. And, all of the preparation was everybody is leading Schoodic, they're leaving Schoodic Peninsula. Nobody's going to be, on the peninsula, just you, and maybe the maintenance guy, but, make sure you have bread and peanut butter and bottled water. And they were really trying to prepare me as if the apocalypse was going to happen. And I do understand that that's extraordinarily critical if you lose power and you lose heat and all of that. And so I had hand warmers stashed. I had, flashlights. I was ready for at least I thought I was ready for it. Yeah. Well, I was. And then, so the next day, the height of this storm blew in at the height of king tides. And so I had this feeling that it was going to be kind of off the hook. And they were talking about roads being, flooded, and they were, and just crazy town. especially for someone from Arizona where we don't like deal with any of this. And so I remember waking up the next morning and I was like, I still have power. My clock's not blinking. I had power all night. I still have heat. Like, this is amazing. And I'm eating my oatmeal and I'm watching this like 4-foot snowdrift against my door, my windows building up. And I was like, the Wabanaki Indians didn't have this fancy studio apartment to be warm in. They just lived outside. Like, they know how to do this. And so I was like, I'm not really in the nor'easter. I wonder what it would be like to be in the nor'easter. And so I put on every piece of clothing that I owned, that I had in my suitcase. I mean, I put everything on. I put 3 layers of long johns. I had the snow pants on. I had the puffy, the down jacket. I had 3 hats and I picked one lens. At the time I was shooting Canon. I took my 100 to 400 and I put it in its, rain gear. Like I mean, it's howling out there. It's howling, it's snowing. And I'm like, oh yes, we're going to the point and we're going to see what it's like to be in a nor'easter. And I mean, it is the clearest definition of awe I have ever experienced outside. It was both the most incredible thing I've ever seen and perhaps one of the most terrifying, just to feel the pulse of the water hitting. I mean, the booming nature of the waves against the cliff, or you could feel it in the ground. And they had clocked like 85-mile-an-hour winds, just right offshore from where I was. And so, I mean, I could barely stand up. And so I was getting blown down. I would stand up. I was getting blown down. I would stand up. And then it was one of my very first experiences where I created meaning first and then made the photograph. I looked over at these trees and I was like, oh, how are these trees taking this? Like, this is my first nor'easter and I'm getting destroyed. Like, these trees are absolutely, like, they've done this before and they're amazing and they're persistent. And why, like, how do I be that? And then I raised my camera and made a few images. I didn't make a whole lot of it, but I walked back to the studio, the comfort and warmth of my studio apartment. And it was so exhilarating. It was almost like it's type 2 fun, right? Like, type 1 fun is where you're having fun in the moment and it's hilarious. And then type 2 fun is where you have this like kind of maybe not the best experience. Like, maybe things aren't going right. And then you look back and you're like, that was awesome, right? Like, so I would I do it again? Absolutely. Do I? Yeah, I do. I go out it doesn't matter, because nothing's going to be worse than an 85-mile-an-hour nor'easter now, right? So like, I didn't find the end limit. I still haven't found the end limit yet of what I can tolerate. So it's like, well, I can do that. Then I can be okay having a little bit of fun when it's raining a little bit, like, so I think, I don't know that was the most amazing photograph I've ever made in my life, but it sure gave me confidence to go out, and whether that's maybe not exactly the most comfortable, and you just get dressed with it. I mean, I definitely celebrated with some hot chocolate after that. And yeah, I mean, what's more fun than hot chocolate? So
I know, right?
Yeah.
I hope you had whipped cream.
I'll just go. Can I put it here?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay. Totally.
So I think, well, like Ginny said, like it's more relaxing. Sometimes I do see that there's like a little bit of competitiveness, but at least with our group, it feels like we're kind of more. Delete that.
Yes, ma'am.
Cut. Yeah. Thanks, Jeannie.
It's gonna be fun.
No, I think there's more opportunities for women, just because it's such a small group of us that do focus on landscape or nature. There's more people or more women that do portraits or weddings. So the opportunities are there for us to grow and explore more, and then hopefully inspire other women to get out and do it with us too. Or like, you don't have to be afraid to go out and shoot.
Yeah, I know that you guys are, especially, so Shanda, Martha, and Jeannie are all working on something that's really amazing. We can talk. Can we talk about that at the end? Yeah,
Yes.
let's talk about that at the end. And but just being able to have this kind of group to say, hey, you can do this. You can all get together. You can find women that like the same thing, that enjoy the same thing, and you can, go out together and or solo if you want to. Like,
Well, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because one of the reasons that we kind of thought about this is because we're often lonely. Like there's no other women to go out and shoot, so you end up just shooting by yourself. Um, and so it's good to have a group of women to go out and shoot with.
I mean, I like photographing alone, but photographing with friends and coordinating is also really fun. So
you get to make fun of people.
Yeah, that's what Martha does. I'm leaving that in the podcast. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Martha makes us laugh.
We have a lot of fun together. I feel like there's a lot more laughter when it's a group of women than when we're out with men, for sure.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jeannie. What's been your experience being Shanda, you've had all kinds of different experiences being a woman in landscape photography. But Shanda's been on the podcast before, but we always want to hear from you again.
So my story is a little bit different because I grew up in a men's world. I have served in the military and even in jobs where it was 7% females. And for me, I've related easier with men and not with women. And so relating with women has been more difficult, but trusting women has been very difficult, especially since I have been around women who were very mean and jealous, and it's hurt my heart and it's scarred me. So trusting women has been a very difficult thing for me. So this is one of the first times in a really long time, if ever, I've had a group of women to connect with. So for me, it's been a scary ride. It's been something where I've been opening up, learning some about myself and connecting, with women, which has been very different for me. So that's been incredible. I will say, additionally, as far as photographing, when I moved back to Durango, and I thought, I would love to have women to shoot with because, especially as a married woman, I think there's an area that you could go in, or that you could get. I don't know what's the right word. Okay, back up. I think as a female, and maybe even as a married woman, traveling with men and doing things long-term, overnight stays and distant travel and stuff is more complicated with men. Yeah. And so for me, having those female companions to A, share expenses, which I love, and B, to be able to travel together and go places together is very advantageous. So not just a monetary, way, but, also with relationships, with our male partners and stuff. It's very safe, I guess, but it's hard to find that. So when I moved back to Durango, I wanted to go shoot. I wanted to go here. I wanted to go there. And there's a few women here and there that I've, tried to reach out to and talk to, but they're very different as well. So for example, some ladies like to shoot off the side of the road. Some are more adventurous. Some are more apt to going out on their own. And so I've been one that's more apt to go out on my own. I'm not afraid to go out on my own. I've been doing it all over the world for a long time. It's either I go by myself or I don't go. But I also realize that that's not as easy for everybody. And so I enjoy giving that confidence to women who are more worried and concerned about getting out. Like, think about the safety issues, think about, where you're going, but go do it. So I would love to inspire other women to go and adventure, go take pictures, think about how to do it safely, think about taking the little steps, facing your fears head on and challenging yourself to push through those fears.
Yeah, we'll talk about safety. We'll talk about safety in a minute. Because I definitely, we've talked about this on this trip, and I think we should touch on that. So, same to you, Nancy. Thank you, Shanda.
Thanks for having me go last. They all said great things, and I think I'm going to reiterate it. But anyway.
You can just take a little of what Jeannie, Shanda, and Martha have said, and, Well,
I actually think pieces mix in. So I've also worked in a very male-dominated field, different from Jeannie's, and similar but different from Shanda's field. And even in that field when I was working there, I realized 10, 15 years in that I had changed myself to fit into that male-dominated world. And coming out of that, I want to be me, my authentic self, and not try to change who I am. So I think when I look at my time in landscape photography, I am more prone to be me, but also finding other women to shoot with and to go out with. It's, as you said, the level of camaraderie with between us. It's amazing. And we go out and we'll all go our own little ways, right?
Right. Yeah, totally.
But we know we're there. And then later on, we'll get together and we'll talk about the experience and we'll laugh. Martha will add some comedy.
And we'll cook delicious food.
And
that always happens.
And Shanda, you're talking about relating to people. I have always found when my husband and I go out and we meet up with other couples, interestingly, I tend to have more in common with the men than the women.
Interesting. That's interesting.
I've done that to the point where the women don't include you. They don't want to, because I've been in a community or even a neighborhood where I could communicate with the males in the community, where the women stopped inviting me or stopped asking me to come around. It's just hard to relate sometimes.
Yeah.
To have those conversations, so it's difficult.
Yeah.
I said sometimes it's easier to relate to males because whether you want it or not or admit it or not, there's competitiveness with women. So they feel threatened that you're going to do better or you're going to do something before they do. So in the guys, they're nonchalant. They don't care. They're like, whatever. So you can kind of relate easier with them knowing that you don't have to or that they don't feel like you're threatened. They're not threatened by you.
Maybe I think for me sometimes it's just that common ground where I can have a conversation in common life experiences. Again, because my life experiences are from working in a male-dominated field. And I do think there are women who would love to go out and do landscape and go out by themselves, but as Shannon was saying, they're not 100% comfortable with that. And I will say even 4 or 5 years ago, I had to have that thought process myself. And it was the first time I really challenged, okay, what am I concerned about really? And I really thought it through and realized, oh, this is a bunch of BS society has fed to me.
Right.
And that I can do this and that I trust my intuition so that if I am in a situation and this is not 100%, then I just get out. But I know I can go into situations and I can read it correctly and I can know whether I should stay or go.
Right. I think it probably helps having some training in that field too. Which Nancy does have. We'll just say that.
I'll add a little bit to that, being her sister and watching this process that she's gone through. I feel like when we went to the Nightscapers conference and there were other women, there was a panel of women photographers talking about going out by themselves. There was a number of female night photographers who were giving talks and talking about their experiences going out. So just seeing that there were other women doing that was a huge factor in, oh, well, I could do that too. So having that visible role model was pretty key in that.
It is. I think it is important to be able to see other women doing things. I know I've looked to other women to show me sometimes what's possible, and I'm also creating the what's possible for other people. But like Nancy in particular, I think you've pushed yourself, and maybe a lot of us have pushed ourselves to kind of go outside of what we would normally do or what's comfortable. I mean, seriously, if we're walking around the wilderness with cameras, I mean, we're usually pushing ourselves a little bit more than, what the norm is. And I think that's sort of the norm for us now. Hey, Brie Stockwell here. I'm the host of this podcast and the woman behind Wild Woman Photography. I have truly enjoyed my growth in nature and landscape photography, and it wouldn't have been possible without personal mentors. If you are ready to begin your own journey or take the next step in your current photography, let me be your personal guide. Find out more about private mentoring sessions with me at wildwomanphotography.com/mentoring. Now back to the episode. Let's go. So will you talk to us about breaking your foot? You know, you talk about these heli weddings and whatever, but I feel like this is a kind of a wild experience, but maybe it's not for you. But tell us more about breaking your foot. And then most people would just go home. But what did you do instead?
Well, I mean, I broke my foot, but not in any kind of crazy situation. I broke my foot because I was looking at my phone when I stepped out of the van that we have. So I was, literally looking at my phone, must have turned my foot the wrong way. I didn't even have a good story about breaking my foot.
This would happen to me. Like this would be my story.
Right.
Yeah,
it's never a great, it's
No.
like you want to be like flying in a helicopter or somewhere wild and
I
break
was
your
running
foot,
away
but
from
no.
a bear. Like
Exactly.
yeah.
But no, I was on my phone when I should have been paying attention and I put my foot down wrong and broke my foot. So anyway, not an exciting story, but I was due to go into the backcountry with a group of women in 2 weeks after that incident. So I was basically in one of those boot things and then on crutches, and I just could not give up the opportunity of going. So I thought, well, I'm just going to go. We were staying in some huts, so I thought, well, I'll just stay around the hut. At least I'm in the backcountry and I can read a book or maybe get down to the lake or something. But I just couldn't give up the opportunity, so I went and I did stay around the hut ish, but then kind of headed down to the lake. I think the first evening we were there for sunset. So I was on my crutches and I just kind of made my way down to the lake, and the other members of the group headed up a mountain to catch the sunset. And they had amazing conditions. And I was so gutted that I was not able to go because I just really desperately wanted to. So then the next evening I decided I'm going to go. But obviously I need more time to get there. So luckily I had a friend with me who very kindly, she's not a photographer, but she offered to carry my camera backpack, and I took her backpack, which was lighter. And so she offered to carry that, and we gave ourselves like an hour and a half extra or something. We left early, and I did get up there. I managed to get up the mountain on my crutches and shoot the sunset. And it wasn't as great as the night before, but I didn't even really think about it. I think that's the thing, is if you're determined to do something, why would I not? I was thinking, why would I not go? I think I just need a bit more time. And it was fine. I just needed a bit more time. But I also, when we were in the backcountry, there was, I think we were there in the fall, they'd already had some snow. So I had to double bag my boot with like plastic bags, because I could put my foot down a bit, but it was in the snow. So I just had to have all these different bags, unfortunately, to keep double bagging it to keep my foot dry. And then during that experience, one of the women I was with, we had one guy with us, her husband came, and one of the pegs in my crutch broke. And so he whittled me out of a piece of wood. He whittled me this a little like peg to go into my crutch so that I could continue to move around. But I mean, I didn't really think it was that wild. But when I think about it, I guess it is. My friend, when I was asking my friend, I was like, I can't think of a wild thing. And she said, well, I wouldn't have gone backcountry with a broken foot. I would have just been like, well, I'll go next time. But I didn't want to miss it.
Your fear of missing out is your FOMO is strong.
Yeah. I mean, I've tried to really deal, I've got better at the FOMO thing of but like, I just love going to that spot, and it's not easy to get a place in those huts. And I just desperately wanted to go. So it's like, I can just sit by the hut and read a book. I didn't realize I would actually do more, but yeah.
I think it's one of those things that you're like, well, yeah, okay, I have a broken foot, but I'm also here. So now what? Okay, but I went down to the lake and back. Could I really go up the mountain? Yeah, probably. Like, I mean, I don't know how difficult
Exactly. That's exactly how it's not a difficult hike. I think it's probably about 7K or something up and down, so it's not far to go. It's not that steep. And if you're going slowly, it's not, like if you're rushing up there, you can be a bit out of breath, but it's not that bad, especially when you're going really slowly on crutches. So
with friends who
it
are
was,
like, I'll support you in your
she carried my bag.
crazy request.
Yeah.
Shout out to those friends who are like, yeah, you want to do that crazy thing? I'm here for you.
Yeah, she was good. Yeah.
That's right. I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is where my brain goes. If I think about that thing ahead of time, I'm like, oh, I don't know if I could do that. Or no, that's not, no, that's kind of crazy. I'm not going to do that. So I could psych myself out a little bit.
Yeah.
But sometimes when you're there and you see, oh, yeah, okay, my will is pretty strong. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
do that. I think it's like that where there's a will, there's a way, or
Yeah.
it really does become mind over matter. And so like all the bags, the
Yeah.
bags. I'm picturing like one foot is great, and then the next foot is kind of like slipping next next to it on snow or a muddy path or ground.
It was a bit muddy and snowy, but I mean, it really wasn't bad. Like if you go, it's the same as climbing things, I think, when I'm not somebody who does like physical activity for the hell of doing physical activity. I like to do stuff to be able to see something or, so I'm fine with taking my time and, so I can do a lot of things
Mhm.
if I do it at a slower pace or, and I think if you're determined that you're going to do it, you can find a way. Like you can just go slowly or break it down into small, manageable pieces.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so okay. I have a couple of like stories from you, but I feel like here's what here's what we want to talk about next.
Okay.
What I love is going out to do the adventure and having the unexpected. And I've talked to several women that have had this happen to them. And you mentioned that you got stuck. So well, maybe I'll just let you talk about it because I've never been there. So you got stuck on the Alvord Playa in Oregon in winter. And y'all, when we talk about going to places for photography, this is the kind of stuff that drives us. And then crazy things still happen because it's nature, right? Or like there's so much unexpected out there. Um, anyway, tell us about this experience and could you start with first telling us about the Alvord Playa? Because I've never been there, but I have been to Death Valley. So just tell us a little bit about that so we have kind of a picture of what that looks like.
Okay. So the Alvord Playa is in southeastern Oregon, and it's one of the more remote places that I've been. It's this beautiful mountainous valley. So the Steens Mountains, I think, are to the west, if I have my geography correct. And then there's this massive playa in the valley, and it's not it's BLM land, so Bureau of Land Management land, which means that it doesn't have the same kind of protections, and you can drive on the playa, which becomes part of the story later on. But the playa itself is so expansive, miles long by miles wide, and one of the beautiful things for people who enjoy abstracts and patterns in nature is as you move along the playa, the patterns change dramatically, and your orientation towards the mountains obviously change as well. So uh, the setting is just beautiful, and we had been there in the spring and summer and wanted to visit in winter because we were passing through, thought we might as well stop. So the scene is that it's this big expansive playa. The mud is kind of like a lightish brown color, and then you're ringed by beautiful mountains, and it's incredibly remote. So the nearest town or settlement, I would say, is Fields Station, which is, I think, something like maybe a half an hour or 45 minutes away. And then there's Denio Junction, which has supposedly has gas, if I remember correctly. Or Fields also has gas, but like these are two little tiny settlements where you're very far away from anything else. And the closest towing company is 2.5 hours away in Burns, Oregon. So that's another critical component of this experience. But this was just like the most ridiculous trip where things just kept on not working out. So we went up to the Pacific Northwest. Our goal was to do coastal stuff, see if we could catch snow in the Columbia River Gorge, so waterfalls with snow around them. And things just kept on not working out. Like this trip, like nothing worked out. Things like we stayed with Ron's mom, and then he left all of his coats in her laundry room. So we had to turn around. We figured this out like 3 hours down the road.
Oh my gosh.
And it's winter. So it's
Oh
like
my
driving
gosh.
back to his mom's house to pick up the coats.
And those
then
are not cheap. You cannot run into like a drugstore like CVS or a Target and just grab that stuff.
Oh yeah, it's like we're camping in 0-degree weather. We need coats.
Right,
So
exactly.
we turn around to get the coats, and then it's like, okay, so what's on the way? Crater Lake is on the way, so we're going to stop at Crater Lake. Well, we drive through rain before heading up into higher elevation. We get up to Crater Lake, and again, we're camping. So in the car, we were sleeping in the back of our RAV4 little SUV, had a mattress, sleeping bags, all that. We get out of the car at like 8 p.m. It's dark. The cargo box is frozen shut. So like things like our camping stove, our fuel, all of that stuff is in the cargo box frozen shut. So it's not like we could boil water, pour it on the lock, and then unlock the. So it's like, oh, this is ridiculous. So then we're like, okay, this clearly isn't working. So we leave Crater Lake to drive to a lower elevation place, find a cheap motel, sleep in that cheap motel, and we're like, okay, it's time to go home. Like things just haven't been working. We're ready for something different. And so we, along the route back to Denver is Alvord Playa. So thinking, oh, it'd be great to see those mountains with snow. So that's our next stop. Well,
luck is sounds like luck is not with you. This is the frustration. This is the bad frustration.
yeah, and this is one of those stories where in the middle of it, we're still laughing. It's not like we're like this, not mad or frustrated. It's just like, this is ridiculous. We've had this series. There were other ridiculous things too, but just keep moving on with the point of the story. So we get to the Alvord Playa. It's 0 degrees. It's like completely frozen or freezing temperatures. So we're thinking, oh, it's totally fine to drive on the playa. Totally fine. There are a bunch of like kind of rocky access roads, but then you can drive down. And then once you're on the playa, then you can drive around. So we sleep on the playa thinking we'll get up for sunrise in the morning and we'll drive around looking for an interesting section of mud, and then we'll photograph sunrise. Well, the thing that we forgot about is that a hot spring meanders its way out onto the playa. It was covered in snow and it was dark. So we're just driving along on this frozen playa until we drive into where the hot spring has meandered out onto the playa, and we immediately sink into the snow-covered frozen hot spring. So that's it's like, and it's important to remember we are 2.5 hours away from the town, the closest town that has a tow truck. So we try all we try all the things during the day. So obviously we don't photograph sunrise because we're now stuck in mud, just sticky, ridiculous mud.
Wait.
Okay.
Wait, hang on a second. And then do you get out of your car and you're trying to get yourself out, and then your feet are all covered with mud?
Oh, feet free? Like it's not feet. It's like everything is covered in mud. Everything. And so but because it's sunny and clear during the day, all the frozen stuff melts. So now it's just mud everywhere. We try everything we can think of to get ourselves out, all the tactics. We realize we're not going to get ourselves out.
And there's like mud kicking up from the tires and like all of the things.
Yeah, all of the things. And we're just, because it's getting warmer, we're just sinking more and more and more into the mud.
Gosh.
And
wait, hang on. How far up was this mud into your tires?
Probably like 6 to 8 inches.
Ugh. Okay.
And
Oh my gosh.
a local guy, there are a couple houses along the edge of the playa. I don't remember how exactly we got in touch with this local guy. He comes out with a chain, tries to get us out. He sinks into the mud. Like he was able to get himself out. We realized, okay, we're just going to stay for the night. We have all our camping gear, 0-degree sleeping bags, all that stuff. We'll be fine. But then once we wake up in the morning, the car is now frozen into the mud. So the car is now literally frozen into the mud. It's like
Were you laughing still? Like,
we were mostly laughing. It was like at some point we're going to get out. The car is going to get out. It might not be this winter.
right. But it was
But
like, it's like the laughing, like, of course this happened. And then the crying, like, it's just like,
oh, it's
like,
but one of the great things, and I think that there are so many lessons in this story, is first, we were lucky because we had cell service. If we didn't, then having like an InReach or a Garmin or a Garmin InReach or some other emergency satellite service, we had all of our camping gear that luckily was no longer frozen into the cargo box, and we had lots of water, we had lots of food. So what could have been an incredibly dangerous situation actually was okay. Like we could have walked the couple of miles to one of the settlements and probably somebody could have helped us. Like we could have stayed with somebody or they could have helped us. So it wasn't like a really bad, dangerous situation, but it wasn't great. Like it's freezing
right.
weather and
I know.
we're,
And you want to go do your things and not be covered with mud. And you want to do photography, which is way more fun than being stuck in mud.
yeah.
So,
And there was no photography happening, even though it was like perfect, great photography conditions because all the water that's in between all those little channels, you have mud tiles with little frozen channels around it. So you have mud and then ice. And so it was like really, really cool. But our car is
you
stuck in the
just
mud.
were like, and I get it. Like, and I know the story isn't over, but I get sometimes when it's like too much, then we can just say, you know what, that's not happening right now. Like my creativity and my ability to concentrate on this and for it to be like a remotely pleasant experience is now gone. So
Oh,
I don't,
yeah.
yeah, like I don't have to do that here,
Yeah.
you
There was
know?
no mental space for thinking, oh, I'm going to get my camera out. Like I'm covered in mud also. Like nothing, I'm not, it was just, it was just getting to be more and more ridiculous. And I wasn't in the mental place to feel like I want to do photography. So
Right.
to wrap up the story, the next morning we're now frozen. We realize that's a problem. Okay, we have to call somebody to help us out. So we call the towing company. We figure out, since we luckily had internet, we figure out, okay, we can call this guy. And then as Ron's negotiating with him, because I can hear what he's saying in terms of the price, and he's like minimum $1,200, and I'm like, negotiate. Like, you have to negotiate. This is ridiculous. And Ron's like, we're not in a situation to negotiate. There's no negotiation with this guy. We have to convince him to drive onto this playa that we're currently stuck on and then try to pull us out. So he finally agrees to come out. And as he's hooking up the winch, we're still kind of frozen. He starts doing his thing. He starts pulling the car out, and you could see the car like release from the frozen mud. It like pops out of the frozen mud.
Like
He,
ice, like an ice
oh
cube.
yeah, 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 exactly. It's like he's breaking our car out of an ice cube.
Oh my
It
gosh.
pops out. He winches the car to dry land, and we're out. We pay him the $1,200.
Happily.
He's
I mean, not so happily,
happily
but
yeah. So, but the car is still completely covered in mud, and we still have probably like 1,100 miles to go to get to Denver because we're kind of done. Like the trip, it's done. Like we're
yeah,
mentally past all
totally.
this. So we stop in West Wendover, Utah. The motel that we decide to stay in, our room did not have heat. So the heater in the room didn't work. We have to drive 55 miles max home because there's mud all over the car and it's like jiggling. It's just so we pull into the driveway. It's like spraying the car off. There's an entire Alvord Playa in my parents' driveway, which is where we stopped first to spray off the mud. It's like the entire driveway is now covered in Alvord Playa mud. And it's just like, we're still laughing. I guess that's the bottom line is we're still laughing.
And to your parents, you know how parents are like,
I don't know what you kids are doing. You know what I mean? Were your parents like, and this is what you do for a living? Like, this is what you do.
Well, growing up, I was the child who like never wore anything but a pink skirt, like a pink and purple skirt. Like I didn't get dirty. I had no interest in nature until I was 21. And I think my parents are probably like, they're like, what is this? Like, this is not the person that we knew. And I think that's great. I'm happy. I'm really happy that I've become a much more outdoorsy person. I still obviously like pink and purple and all those girly things, but yeah, it's just like, this is what you do for fun.
Right.
Come with me on my next adventure. Be a wild woman and join me on one of my small group photography escapes in places like the cypress swamps of East Texas or White Sands, New Mexico. Go to wildwomanphotography.com for all the details. While you're there, you can check out featured wild women, episode transcripts, and more. Oh, and I'd love for you to support this podcast and all these incredible wild women in photography by leaving a review or sharing with a friend. Thank you so much for listening.